Here's a video regarding quizzes. Don't think of quizzes as something that you want to just count as a quiz. The quiz section here, if I go to it, you click on quizzes, this can be used for maybe something that you previously had as handouts, where students answer questions and you want an easier way of grading them. So just don't think of them in terms of it will count as a quiz. Now, you can click up here in the Add Quiz button. However, what they really recommend is starting with question banks. Because if you do a question bank, you can pull questions from those banks into quizzes. So for example, if I were to create a question bank, I would click this button right here, click on Manage Question Banks, and then I would add a question bank. Now, if you don't have your question banks based off of topics, you can still, create the questions and just import them in. So, for example, I'm just going to call this, I'm going to call this Sample Bank 1. I press Enter, then I can click on this link, and it gives me the spot to add in questions that go into this particular bank. And then these questions can be selected to go into quizzes. Now, sometimes, honestly, you'll just go directly into creating a quiz. But if you create that information from a quiz, it can't be put back into a bank rather easily. But you can pull from a bank and put it into a quiz. So, for example, if I click over here on Add a Question, if you look here, here's the question. You can select the particular type of question. Here are the options. In the standard quizzes section, they have under development a new quizzes section, in which at the time of the making of this video is not available to you, but there's a couple more options for question types available on new quizzes. This is your traditional quizzes functionality. So you can see the different options here. A variety of questions. No question means this is a spot where you'd actually probably put in some directions for maybe the upcoming questions. So this is just an overview of what happens. Multiple choice, obviously, during a pandemic, and when students can probably easily cheat, this might not be the best option, but I know it's common in AP classes, and so you can ask your question here. I'm just going to type this very quickly. And of course, you can type in 4 options right here. I'm just going to say 1, 2, 3, 4. Of course, you'd put in some meaningful content right there. And then, if you want to add a 5th option, a lot of standardized tests use A through E. They won't see A, B, C, D, E. They will just see the answer options in the student view. So heads up on that. Makes it a little bit challenging when you're doing answers A and B. So you got to watch out. Okay, so if I click Add Another Answer, then I could go with 5 if you have 5 choices. These buttons do different things. Click to enter comments for a correct answer. Mouse over this. You can click to enter comments for a wrong answer. I typically put in general comments. So I click here, and what will show up, whether the student gets it right or wrong, is this answer box upon submission or whenever you reveal the answers to students. So I just like to use the general answer comment box. So remember to click done. There are times when I forgot to do that. And then of course you can click update question. And then you see the question in a list here. Okay, you can move or copy the question to another bank. And that's why it's kind of good to start with banks and import into an actual quiz. However, you don't have to do that. And of course, if I add another question, I can select another question type. You can select an essay question. Of course, that'll have to be graded by you looking at it, because Canvas is smart at multiple choice and numeric responses, but essay questions definitely have to be graded by the teacher. So keep that in mind. So if I'm just going to punch in, answer this question, and I'm just going to let that go, and then I click update question. So these are in a bank, okay? It's going to be a long video to go over some of these things, and so I'm going to leave those off if you want to deal with outcomes. So once you have that bank created, you can actually then create a new quiz. So if I come over here back to quizzes, and remember you don't have to create banks, but it can be helpful if you want to reuse questions and things like that. So now I can actually create the quiz. So if I were to click this button, I can create the quiz. I'm going to go over to one of my previous courses, and if I go over to quizzes, because I have a lot of banks here, if I click to add a quiz, I'm just going to say sample quiz. I can give directions here. You got your text editor. Quiz type. Graded quiz, graded survey, or ungraded survey. So these are options. This is your grading category, which we have not set up yet as of this video. They need to match up with PowerSchool. So those are your grading categories in PowerSchool. Do you want to shuffle the answers? Believe it or not, Canvas does not allow you to shuffle questions automatically. You would have to make a copy of the quiz and create two different versions by shuffling the questions yourself. So heads up on that. Time limit, allow multiple attempts. This is your visibility on their answers and responses. So check that out and you can experiment with that. Show one question at a time. Obviously just displays one question at a time versus having students scroll through a list of questions. Some teachers like to show one question at a time to reduce the chances of cheating when you're in class. Okay, so if students are at home, it's a whole nother ball game. You can do an access code. I've done this because it's sometimes an easy way of letting students not get into the test prior to the exact time you want them to. I'll announce to the students, okay, go ahead and get into your quiz. The password is Canvas. Filter IP addresses really applies to if you want them at a certain computer with a certain address, especially at home. I wouldn't recommend that. That'd be hard to implement. Who are you going to assign it to? The date that it's due, and the available from, so they won't see it unless this date is at least current, and then the date it closes out. So this is when they won't be able to, after this date is when they won't be able to access it anymore. So that's something to keep in mind. If you want to do two different quizzes, you can make a copy of this quiz and on one of them add in a different group of students. Okay, that might be a little bit much for this video. So that's how you do that part. And if I come over here to the questions, look, you can add a question just like I did in the question bank. Or what you could do is you can add a question group, or you can find questions. So if I want to find my question banks that I created, I click there. And here are a ton of question banks that I have. This is an AP class, a lot of multiple choice questions. So if I click here to select it, here are the questions. I can select the ones I want, or I can go select all, and then I can click add questions. And what happens is these questions pop up here. So students will see those questions and can answer them. Now this is multiple choice. Remember, there's other options as well. So if I were to look at my quizzes, let me show you one more example. So let me go to this sample quiz that I have here called Control Structures, but I didn't use it as a quiz. This was formerly a handout. So you can repurpose your handouts to be quizzes. So I already used this before. If I click Edit, okay, I went over these settings. By the way, if you're using it as a handout, you might want to have an extended time on it, if you give them a couple days. And then the idea is if they don't complete the quiz in one setting, they should just close out of it and not click the Submit button. because that way they can re-get into it if you run this as a handout. But if I click questions, here are some of the questions in the handout. This is my text-based instructions. Explain the errors in the following if structures. And then if I look here to this first question, if I click to edit this question, here is my prompt and they have to respond to it. Well, this requires actually a written response. So what's helpful about this is here is my answer, and I would have to hand grade this. Because of the fact that Canvas isn't smart enough to know, like, particular sentences or things that I'm looking for. If it's a numeric response, if it's a multiple choice, that's a different question. So sometimes it can make it easier for grading. And then once this is graded, students can see the answer result. And there's other things that require just a simple response. Okay, this is a true-false question. Will this expression evaluate to true or false? I selected false. Okay, and you can provide a general answer explanation as to why. So this was something I ran not as a quiz, but as a handout, because I thought it would be, some questions are auto-graded, and other questions I'd have to read the student responses and then score them myself. So that's a little heads up on that. If I were to go back here, there's some other options. You can look at your quiz statistics, okay? So that's an option. You could scroll through to see how well students answered the question. If I go back, you can moderate this quiz. So if you notice, some students took a long time to this because I did not run this as a quiz, but you can edit and you can give them extra attempts. So that's an option there. Some other things, you can download all files. I haven't really used that too much, but if you click Speed Grader, this is the quiz and how you can grade it. So for example, this is the correct response I was looking for, and this is what the student responded. So if it's something that I have to manually grade, I can put in the points, just like I did right there, and then I can put in some additional feedback. Now, questions that need review, so any open-ended questions that you need to grade, is I need to click on the question. They'll have a question list here, and I can score them. Then I could put in the points. At the end here, they even give you a fudge points, and then you could update the scores based off of you manually grading some questions. So heads up on that. The final thing I want to show you, even though there's a lot here, is the log. So if you have a particular student, you can click View Log. So this is helpful. This is like the metadata behind the quiz. So if you're giving a live quiz that runs as a quiz, and for example, if a student answered a question, let's say this student actually took a while to answer the questions. Let's say the student answered a question in 5 seconds. That's an indication that they probably got the answer off of somebody else, because it might take them more than 5 seconds to read the question. So you know they're probably getting answers from someone else. So the view log can be very helpful for running quizzes. I know this was a lot of information, and there's probably more details, but experience will really help you when you start to use quizzes. Remember that they cannot just be used to count as quizzes. They can be used for handouts or some other things that you want auto-graded or you want to provide feedback as.